Good afternoon. Welcome to the tea table. I am so happy you've joined me today. And we're outside in autumn glory, and we are saying goodbye to summer today and hello to autumn or fall. And I am playing Vivaldi because my son sent me this morning. He said, tomorrow is goodbye to summer. And then he sent me the Vivaldi Four Seasons, summer and fall. And I thought, what a perfect tea talk today, because I was going to talk about the first day of autumn, which is tomorrow, September 23rd. 2023. Yes. Well, if you haven't gotten your tea yet, please pause, get your tea, and I will be waiting for you. I have today for you a lovely, it looks to me like goodbye summer, hello autumn. Isn't that beautiful? It has these lovely yellow and brown and gold and cream. Just lovely, perfect colors. And I have made a tea for you that is exotic. I found this tea up in my pantry. Way in the back, it had gotten behind something. It's Royal Elixir Tea, Pure Ceylon Tea, Impra, and it has a picture of London and Big Ben. You can see on the very front. However, it was sent to me by my son, Samuel, several years back, and he got it in California in a Russian shop of imports and wonderful things, and they were selling it, and here it is. It's a loose leaf, lovely black tea. And I tell you, it is the biggest leaves I have ever seen. And so I'm thinking it must be what the Russians like also, because they were selling it. So I made it. Let's see what it is. And I am going to pour out. This little cup is so sweet. Look at that. Very dainty. And in order to pour out, because I need to use my tea strainer, which is brass, and you can see that it fits in a little dish. I use this. It's a Queen Elizabeth commemorative from her 50th anniversary, and it's a picture of her when she was young. And so the tea table has a lot of lovely things. Now, I need to make sure that the hole is there. Okay, let's pour out. Oh, it's very nice and brisk. Okay. And you know, the leaves must have settled to the bottom, because I am not getting many leaves, actually. And I am going to do this because it somehow spilled over. And I have a little napkin here too. I'll find it. And I'm going to put just a little splash of milk. This is a darling little picture. It has the romantic man and lady, magenta, turquoise, gold, white, pink. It looks very French or Austrian. These are really old, all of this entire set, at least 100 years old. teacups could talk. Think of the people that have had tea or had dinner on the china you use if it's vintage. Oh my goodness, that is the most delicious tea. Ceylon. It has a romantic. It reminds me of a tea that I once had in Victoria, BC, and it was called Russian Caravan Tea, and was talking about when the caravans went up the Silk Road. That's how the tea came to us originally from Asia. Marco Polo went to China. Remember, he was Italian. And he and his son went on a long journey. They went all the way to the Emperor of China. He served them tea. They brought it back. It took them years. And the rest is history. Tea became the drink in Italy and in Europe, and then they took it. Then when the sailing ships under Queen Elizabeth I in the 1500s, they brought the tea to England. And then England loved it so much, they became known for tea parties, high tea, china, creating beautiful china. Oh, hundreds of companies and hand-done, hand-painted. Many of these companies don't exist now because of the outsourcing. They do that in England too. So it's, for a business model, it's less expensive, but it's a sad loss, isn't it? Well, I haven't forgotten the treat. And this is a lovely treat. I wish you were all here. This is pumpkin muffins. Yes, and I put a little flower, a little autumn flower with the 3 muffins. One for you, one for me, and one for our friends. Yes. Now, I kind of like to show you something else I have. The tea talk, I thought of it today. It's kind of like show and tell, isn't it? I loved show and tell at school when I was little, but so that's kind of what we're doing here. Well, I have all of this on a beautiful green tray that I want to show you. If I can do this without breaking. It's such a big tray, but you will love this. It's tin, metal, painted, and on the back it says, made in Russia. It's hand done in Russia, and it is so light, really. It's very large, but light, and so one could bring so many wonderful items to bring to the living room when you have guests and you're serving tea. If you don't have a tea cart, I have a tea cart. However, my tea cart, like many people's tea carts, it holds a lot. So it's kind of hard to use it unless you absolutely empty it and have it just as a universal rolling in and rolling out. And it's very nice. In England, every home had a tea cart that I was in. And they are I stayed in several families when I was in a musical group called Shekinah. We traveled around and we were billeted out. And so we stayed in different homes. And you learn so much about the culture. Well, almost every house, I would be awoken in the morning with a little knock on the door and a cup of tea. And usually it was the man of the house. He would bring a tray of tea with milk already in it. What a lovely way to wake up. Then often, I didn't really have a high tea in the home or an afternoon tea. I had that at Harrods, the big department store. But in the evening, when everyone is done with dinner and you're sitting in the sitting room, in comes the tea cart. And on it would be a tea, cocoa, hot water, hot milk, cold milk, and they called them biscuits, cookies, or crackers. And the crackers they called cookies, and the cookies they called biscuits. It was quite interesting. So, very light fare, but was a nice top off for the evening. And I'll never forget that. It was, their homes ran so orderly with each of their functions, which most of us have habits that we keep every day. Most of us have coffee in the morning, but I had coffee later in the day when I was in England, but that tea in the morning was lovely. And of course their tea is delicious. They know how to make it. It's always hot. They're very strict. I learned how to make tea there. You warm the pot with hot boiling water, and then you go to put the tea in, and then when their houses are sometimes cold, they put a tea cozy over it. But they were very interesting. There is a pot, and I have one. It's called a Brown Betty, and it's made by Savon in England. And it's, everyone has a Brown Betty. That's kind of like the everyday teapot. Well, the lady of the house told me once, she said, you know, you never wash your Brown Betty with soap. Just rinse it out, because somehow the tea builds up and through the hot water keeps the tea good. So they have all these little tricks they do, which is quite interesting. And I learned a lot. Well, I wanted to talk today about Vivaldi, because the Four Seasons is so special. And we lived in Shelton when my kids were growing up, and there's a beautiful valley in Shelton called the Skokomish Valley, and people call it the Skoke. When you're going on 101 on the loop, say you're going from Olympia toward Hoodsport or Port Angeles on that road, on your left is the Skoke Valley, and on your right would be Union and then Belfair and the waterfront area of beautiful Hood Canal. But to the left is the Skoke Valley. It is equally as beautiful. And I had good friends, I still have good friends that lived in the Skoke generationally. One of my friends was a 5th generation, and these wonderful people, their farms, and they had dairy farms, and then they had corn farms, and the soil is rich and wonderful. Well, we had a friend, Peggy Johnson, and she was a civic leader, and she would have events at her farm. And I remember we all went out, a whole group of people, maybe 100 people, and driving through that beautiful Skoke Valley. It was in the fall. She would have it September, October, autumn leaves flowing. I was listening to Vivaldi, and I thought, it doesn't get better than this. And I discovered the richness of driving through the autumn leaves with beautiful classical music playing. And Vivaldi's Four Seasons, they are so expressive. And they say so much. I need to just, for some reason, this is on repeat today, and so it keeps repeating the same one. So we'll move along. But the Four Seasons I know one of the seasons with Vivaldi, it's like the music is tremolo and it's like freezing cold, and he's describing being really cold in the winter, and that's his winter. And then the spring is alive, and then the summer is flowing and romantic, and then the fall is the beginning of the leaves falling, and it tells a story, doesn't it? Well, Antonio Vivaldi was born in Venice, Italy. You know, I thought it was Florence. I'm so glad I looked it up. It was Venice. And his father was the most famous violinist of the day, and he was Antonio Vivaldi's teacher. He taught him violin. He became a very good violinist. His father was in the top symphony, the leading violinist of the day. Well, Vivaldi was the oldest son, and the custom was the oldest son would become a priest. So he was dedicated to the priesthood. And they called him the red-headed priest because he had red hair. Well, he had trouble with asthma, and the services were very long. And he just felt like he could not officiate for his whole life over these long services. So they sent him with his musical talent to the Pietà, which was a home for foundlings, and that meant a home for orphans. And he developed these choirs and these orchestras that became so famous. Some of his most famous music he wrote for them. People would come from all over the world to hear these choirs, and then they would take an offering, and it really helped defray the costs of raising these children. And these choirs were just renowned, and playing this beautiful music. So Vivaldi continued on, and he was world famous and went to Vienna, and his music was published in Amsterdam and all over. But then, as it often happens, in the 1730s, his music kind of became out of style, and it's so sad. And then he wrote operas, and he became very well known for those. But it's said that when he died, he had a very simple funeral, and he was almost forgotten. He died penniless, just like Johann Sebastian Bach. Now, I think we need to take a lesson from this. There are so many things in this world and in life that are so much more important than money. Money is just a measure, and God says He will provide all our needs. And riches are not measured in material. They're measured in beauty, in heart, in music, in art. And so many artists and musicians suffered, but actually that suffering went into their music and made them so human. And there's so much pathos and so much love and so much goodness and grace and mercy in their music. And so don't measure your legacy or what you're leaving to people by material goods, because remember, no one's taking anything with them. The only thing we're doing is leaving something good for the next generation. And so that's where we should put our energy and time, right? And do our best. And there's nothing wrong with money. It's great. It can help. It can do so many good things. And it will be there. I believe hard work will always bring provision. So, but it is interesting that someone like the great Vivaldi really didn't have all of this world's goods, but he had a treasure, and he was a true believer. He was a very strong religious Christian man, and you can feel it in his music. He has that heart. Well, I have had an exciting week. I do have a fun little handbag to show you. I thought, when fall comes, I love leather. I'm looking for leather. And this was upstairs, and I thought, this is to go to the tea talk today. This is perhaps one of the oldest handbags I have. It is truly vintage. And you can't see the inside, but I'll show you what's in here. That is so special. That used to be, if I could get it out, you know, I don't know if I can get it out, but it's a mirror. It's a little mirror that comes in and comes out. But the lining of this is so beautiful. It's that British tan, real leather, and it smells, it's Italian leather. The Italians gave us so much. The violin, all this fabulous, and Vivaldi was the end of the Baroque era, and Bach was the very right after Vivaldi, and was influenced by Vivaldi and Corelli, another beautiful Italian. We've played his music many times. Isn't that sweet? Isn't it darling? And it's so well made. Well, I'm going to set that there. And then I brought something just for fun. This is a little scarf. I'm actually giving it to my daughter because she is the most reader that I know. She is a read books. This little silk scarf has all books on it. It's a library. Isn't that fun? And it's navy blue and silk and just not too much. And yes, it's silk. I knew it was silk. I could feel it. So there it is. Just put it on for a minute, see what it looks like. It's just really simple. But it has back to school, back to the books, back to autumn reading. And then I also brought along, this is what I have for my iPad. And I thought, I'm just going to show it to everyone. I love this. It's leather and it's the world. It's the whole world. That is the European side. And then Africa down below. And it's leather and I love it. And I just, in the fall, I can't get enough leather. Oh, now that is the winter one, that one. I just decided to play all of the 4 seasons because they come out to just the right amount of time. This is kind of a nice scarf. It's not too big, but I'm going to give it to her because she deserves it. She reads the classics. I'm talking about, she reads the great books and she understands them. And she loves them. So I am going to give this to Victoria. Yes. She and her friend have been, well, they took quite a while. They read Dante's Inferno, and it was quite an undertaking. But when you read the great books, they change your life. Even if it's slow going, reading is what will make us bright and curious. And one page of a book has so much on it if it is a well-written classic. I'll tell you what I'm thinking of reading, Sir Walter Scott, because he is such a great man in history. You know, he wrote Ivanhoe, the Waverley Tales, Rob Roy. In his day, he was the most beloved author, and now he's hardly known. Scottish, he was another man who was fooled by his publisher and signed his rights away and had built this beautiful estate called Abbotsford. You can visit it in Scotland. It is magnificent. Just look it up online. It has to be one of the most beautiful homes set in the Highlands. And Sir Walter Scott had so much dignity and so much honor. This man cheated him. And so suddenly he had all these debts, and he said, I will pay them. I don't care. I'll take it. And he would work all night long. Some people think his life was shortened by his hard work. That is why he was so prolific. He wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and he was published in the papers and then into books. And he is known for the historical novel, and because he really invented it. As a young boy, he had been sickly, and he lived often with his grandparents. And his grandmother would tell him the border tales. That was Bonnie Prince Charlie and William Wallace and the Bruce and all the stories of Scotland. And Scotland had kind of lost its personal pride and its feeling. It was kind of waning. And he took all of that information and put it into stories. And he is credited with, in the early 1800s, reviving Scottish spirit and pride. The Tartans came back, all of the knowledge of the different clans and the tribes and all of the heraldry and the border tales. And that's where you have Braveheart, William Wallace. That's where that comes from. I believe Sir Walter Scott. There was one other lady, Jean Porter, who wrote The Scottish Chiefs, and I have that book. And she wrote the stories. And then he expanded them and put them into everyday language and wrote so many and he's right before Charles Dickens, but he's in Scotland, early Victorian era. And he admired Jane Austen, and Jane Austen and he both admired Samuel Johnson. Remember the great dictionary? And we had a tea talk about Samuel Johnson, actually a couple years ago. But the great Samuel Johnson that created the English dictionary, they all admired Samuel Johnson. I am saying this to say we all need inspiration. Nothing is born in a vacuum. These beautiful writings we have, these beautiful songs. Bach loved Vivaldi. Bach had many people he admired. Then Beethoven admired Bach, and Mozart admired Bach. And then you had Mendelssohn admired all of them. We can inspire one another. We have power to bring good to our world. Let us do our best. Do not underestimate your little good deeds, your little cheer, your ideas. Don't ever underestimate them, because little is the beginning seed, and little is much when God is in it. Sometimes we have to see things from the end in order to create now. And I say that because the tea talk I was going to do today is going to be another time, hopefully next week or one of these weeks in October. And I'll tell you what it was. My son, who is building a cabin, he's waiting for all his approvals, and he has to go through all the well water, getting power, getting septic before he can start building. So he and my other son, through their work, were given this incredible amount of beautiful maple wood. I mean, beautiful. And so he's been creating, and He said, look at that piece of maple. That's a desk. Okay, he saw it in his mind. He created a desk that is so beautiful, and I wanted to have it on the tea talk. It's so heavy. It's going to take 2 men to carry it. It is so beautiful. And I said, wow, I didn't know how beautiful maple wood is. And then we started thinking, maple leaves are the best leaves for autumn. Maple syrup. Look at what the maple tree has given us. And so that was, I said, wow, Nathaniel, you saw the end and you went for it. That's what vision is. Vision is seeing. And the Bible says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So it all begins with an idea. That's what Michelangelo, when they asked him, how did you create David? And when he was carving him out of this slab of stone, he said, I just got rid of everything that didn't look like David. But in his mind, he saw it. So I think we can apply that to absolutely every area of our lives. I really do. And I think it's exciting. And so I want to thank all of you for coming to the Tea Talk today. Find a little leather purse for autumn. It's time to change to a brown or a gold or a green. I love forest green. But isn't that sweet? It's a little box purse. And get a good book. Find some good tea. Prepare it. Invite someone in, or just have it alone and read your book and write in your journal. We are so blessed to be given autumn after wonderful summer. We're ready for a change, aren't we? Yes. I don't ever remember a summer more beautiful than this one in the Pacific Northwest. We have hardly had a rainy day. It's been absolutely gorgeous. And yet, only a few days were too hot. So we have been very, very blessed, and we could now enjoy a little cozy rain by the fire with our books. This tea is delicious. So try Pure Ceylon, whatever that is. I do believe that when you use loose leaf tea, it has a completely different level. It's the real thing versus the tea bags. You know, the tea bags are nice too, but the loose leaf, very nice. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me. Have a fabulous week. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Please push the notification bell and the share button. And if you liked it, the like button. And your comments are fabulous. Thank you for your comments. I love them and they encourage me greatly. So thank you so much. God bless you. Have a good week and happy autumn 2023.